There are people who do not simply look at the world, they feel it. In every gesture, in every silence, in every fleeting glance exchanged between strangers, they perceive something that others let pass without a second thought. They walk through crowded rooms and sense the weight of unspoken words. They sit in quiet spaces and hear the echo of emotions that have no name. They look into someone's eyes and see not just a person, but a story, a wound, a hidden longing that perhaps even the other person has forgotten exists. If you have ever felt this way, if you have ever wondered why the world seems heavier on your shoulders than it does on others, then perhaps these words are meant for you. There is a peculiar kind of loneliness that comes from seeing too much. It is not the loneliness of empty rooms or absent friends. It is something deeper, something that lives in the space between what you perceive and what you can share. It is the loneliness of standing in a garden where everyone admires the flowers, while you alone notice that the roots are rotting beneath the soil. This is not a gift that announces itself with fanfare. It arrives quietly, sometimes in childhood, sometimes later, often without warning. One day you simply realize that you are noticing things that others seem to miss, the slight tremor in someone's voice when they say they are fine, the way a smile can hide 1,000 sorrows, the subtle shift in energy when someone enters a room carrying grief they have not yet acknowledged to themselves. At first, this awareness might feel like a superpower. You understand people in ways they do not understand themselves. You anticipate needs before they are spoken. You offer comfort for wounds that have not yet been revealed. And for a while, this feels beautiful. It feels like connection, like intimacy, like a bridge between souls. But then something begins to shift. You start to realize that not everyone wants to be seen this deeply, that your perception, which feels so natural to you, can be unsettling to others. That when you reflect back to someone what they have been hiding even from themselves, they do not always respond with gratitude. Sometimes they respond with fear, sometimes with anger. Sometimes they simply pull away, leaving you wondering what you did wrong. And this is where the paradox begins to unfold. The very quality that allows you to connect so deeply with others is the same quality that pushes them away. Your sensitivity, your awareness, your capacity to see beneath the surface becomes a mirror that many people are not ready to face. And so you learn, slowly and painfully, to dim your own light, to pretend you do not notice, to smile and nod and say nothing when every fiber of your being is screaming with recognition. This is the first wound of seeing too much, the wound of self-betrayal. You begin to live a double life. On the outside, you perform normalcy. You engage in small talk about weather and weekend plans. You laugh at jokes that do not reach you. You nod along to conversations that feel like they are happening behind a pane of glass. But inside, a different world is unfolding. A world of depths and shadows, of meanings beneath meanings, of truths that pulse just beneath the surface of every interaction. And the distance between these two worlds grows wider with every passing year. There is a philosopher who once wrote that the deepest form of loneliness is not the absence of company, but the inability to communicate what matters most to you. This is the loneliness of the one who sees too much. It is not that you lack people around you. It is that you lack people who can meet you in the depths where you actually live. You might have friends who love you, family who cares for you, colleagues who respect you. But there remains a part of you, perhaps the truest part, that has never been fully witnessed. That lives in exile from the ordinary world, that watches from behind your eyes as the social dance unfolds, always participating, never quite belonging. And the tragedy is that the more clearly you see, the more invisible you become. Because when you see too much, you also feel too much. You absorb the emotions of others like a sponge absorbs water. You walk into a room and immediately sense the undercurrents of tension, resentment, desire, fear. You have conversations and come away carrying feelings that are not your own. You watch the news and feel the weight of distant suffering as if it were happening to someone you love. This is not metaphor. This is not exaggeration. This is the lived reality of a nervous system that has never learned how to filter out the excess, that receives the full broadcast of human experience, while others seem to have access to a more merciful static. And over time, this constant absorption begins to exhaust you. You find yourself needing more solitude than others seem to require. Not because you do not love people, but because being around them costs you something that others do not have to pay. Every interaction becomes an exchange of energy, and you are always giving more than you receive. Not because others are taking from you deliberately, but because your very nature is to give, to receive, to process, to understand. And so you retreat, not in bitterness but in self-preservation. You cancel plans at the last minute because you simply cannot bear one more evening of pretending. You take long walks alone, finding in nature a presence that does not demand anything from you. You sit in silence, not because you have nothing to say, but because everything you could say feels inadequate to the magnitude of what you experience. And this is where the loneliness deepens. Because the very solitude that heals you also isolates you. The more you retreat to protect yourself, the wider the gap grows between you and the world. The people who once sought your company begin to drift away, interpreting your absence as rejection. The invitations become less frequent, the phone rings less often. And one day you look up from your solitude and realize that you have built walls you never intended to build. But here is what no one tells you about seeing too much. The problem is not your perception. The problem is not your sensitivity. The problem is not even the world's inability to meet you where you are. The problem is that you have been carrying a burden that was never yours to carry alone. You see, those who see too much often make a fundamental error. They believe that because they can perceive suffering, they are responsible for alleviating it. They believe that because they can see the truth, they must speak it. They believe that because they understand the depths, they must somehow rescue everyone from their own shallows. This is a beautiful impulse, but it is also a trap. Because no amount of seeing can save another person from their own journey. No amount of understanding can accelerate someone else's awakening. No amount of love can force open a heart that has chosen to remain closed. And the one who sees too much often exhausts themselves trying to do the impossible, trying to carry the weight of a world that was never asking to be carried. There is a story I once heard about a man who could see in the dark. In a village where everyone else was blind to the night, he alone could navigate the shadows. At first, the villagers celebrated him. They asked him to guide them through the darkness, to warn them of dangers they could not perceive, to describe the beauty of starlight they could not see. But as the years passed, the man grew weary. Every night while others slept, he was called upon to watch. Every danger, every threat, every subtle movement in the darkness became his responsibility. And though the villagers were grateful, they could never truly understand his exhaustion. They could never comprehend what it cost him to see what they could not. One day the man stopped answering their calls. He retreated to a small hut at the edge of the village and lived alone with his gift and his burden. The villagers called him selfish. They said he had abandoned them. But the man knew a truth they could not understand. He knew that his gift was not meant to serve their blindness forever. It was meant to teach him something about the nature of sight itself. And perhaps you recognize yourself in this story. Perhaps you too have spent years being the one who watches, the one who warns, the one who carries the burden of awareness while others sleep peacefully in their unknowing. But here is what the man in the story eventually discovered, and what you too must come to understand. The weight you carry is not inherent to the seeing. It is inherent to what you believe the seeing demands of you. You have confused perception with obligation. You have mistaken awareness for duty. You have assumed that because you can see the darkness, you must single-handedly illuminate it. But no one asked this of you. The universe did not grant you this sensitivity so that you could exhaust yourself in service to others' blindness. It gave you this perception so that you could learn something essential about the nature of consciousness itself. Something that requires exactly this kind of solitude, exactly this kind of apparent abandonment by the world. This is what your loneliness has been preparing you for all along. Not punishment, preparation. Not exile, initiation. Not abandonment, sacred solitude. Your sensitivity did not isolate you by accident. It isolated you by design. The design of a consciousness that knows exactly what each soul needs for its awakening, even when that soul cannot yet understand the purpose of its suffering. This is the teaching that those who see too much must eventually learn. Your perception is not a responsibility, it is a capacity. Your sensitivity is not a burden, it is a language. Your awareness is not a curse, it is an invitation. An invitation to what? An invitation to a different way of being in the world. You see, for years you have used your sight to serve others. You have used it to understand, to help, to heal, to connect. And these are beautiful uses of a beautiful gift. But there is another use that you may have overlooked. You can use your sight to see yourself. This might sound simple, but for those who see too much, it is often the most difficult thing of all. Because when you have spent your life turned outward, perceiving the world in all its complexity, turning inward can feel disorienting. When you have spent your energy understanding others, understanding yourself can feel indulgent, even selfish. But this is the paradox that must be resolved. The one who sees too much often knows everyone except themselves. They can describe the inner landscape of a stranger with stunning accuracy, but they cannot name their own deepest needs. They can sense the unspoken wounds of a friend, but they have never truly faced their own. They can perceive the truth in any room except the room of their own heart. And this is why they end up alone. Not because others cannot love them, not because the world is too shallow for their depths, but because they have not yet learned to love themselves with the same tenderness they offer everyone else. They have not yet turned their gift of sight inward, to the place where their own healing waits. There is a particular kind of pain that comes from this realization. It is the pain of recognizing that you have been searching for outside what can only be found within, that you have been seeking in others the witness you have denied yourself, that you have been offering the world a presence you have never fully offered to your own soul. But within this pain lies the seed of transformation, because when you finally turn your gaze inward, when you finally sit with yourself the way you have sat with so many others, something remarkable begins to happen. You discover that the loneliness you have been running from is not an enemy to be defeated. It is a teacher to be honored. Your loneliness has been trying to tell you something all along. It has been telling you that you have abandoned yourself, that in your endless giving you have forgotten to receive, that in your constant perceiving you have forgotten to be perceived, that in your deep seeing of others you have overlooked the one who most needed to be seen, yourself. And here is the beautiful truth that waits on the other side of this recognition. When you learn to see yourself, truly see yourself, with all your depths and shadows and unspoken longings, the loneliness begins to transform, not because you suddenly find people who can meet you in your depths, though sometimes that happens too, but because you no longer need external validation of your own existence. You no longer need someone else to witness you in order to feel real. You become your own witness. This is not narcissism. This is not self-absorption. This is the most radical act of self-love available to a human being. It is the act of finally showing up for yourself the way you have always shown up for others. Think about how you have treated others. Think about the patience you have offered to friends who could not see their own patterns. Now ask yourself, have you ever offered this same grace to yourself? For most who see too much, the answer is no. You have reserved your harshest judgments for yourself. You have demanded perfection from yourself while offering forgiveness to everyone else. This is the great imbalance that must be corrected. Not by becoming selfish, but by finally including yourself in the circle of beings worthy of your own compassion, by finally understanding that the witness you have been seeking has been living inside you all along. And when you do this, something shifts in your relationship with solitude. Solitude is no longer an exile, it becomes a homecoming. You discover that the silence you once feared is actually full of presence, your own presence, the presence you have been seeking in others, the presence you thought you needed from the world, has been waiting inside you all along. Patient, quiet, eternal. This does not mean you no longer need connection. Human beings are wired for relationship, and that wiring does not disappear simply because you have learned to be with yourself. But the quality of your need changes. You no longer seek connection from a place of emptiness, hoping others will fill the void you have neglected. You seek connection from a place of fullness, wanting to share the overflow of a cup that is already complete. And this changes everything. When you meet others from this place of fullness, you no longer absorb their pain as if it were your own. You can witness it, honor it, even sit with it, but you do not have to carry it. Your compassion becomes cleaner, less entangled, more sustainable. You can love without losing yourself. You can see without being consumed by what you see. This is not a lesser form of love. It is a more sustainable one. It is the love of someone who has learned that you cannot pour from an empty cup. And paradoxically, this is when genuine connection becomes possible. Because the truth is, deep connection is not possible between two empty cups trying to fill each other. It is only possible between two full cups, overflowing into each other's presence. It is only possible when both people have done the work of becoming whole unto themselves, so that their meeting is a celebration rather than a compensation. This is the teaching hidden within the loneliness of seeing too much. Your loneliness was never a punishment for your perception. It was a call to complete yourself, a call to stop waiting for the world to witness you and to become your own witness, a call to stop searching for belonging in external places and to discover that you have always belonged to yourself. And once you understand this, a profound relaxation enters your being. You no longer have to dim your light to make others comfortable. You no longer have to pretend you do not see what you see. You no longer have to exile the deepest parts of yourself in order to fit into a world that cannot yet comprehend them. You can simply be, and in that being, in that radical acceptance of your own nature, you become a different kind of presence in the world. You become someone who sees without needing to fix, who understands without needing to be understood, who loves without needing to possess what you love. This is the freedom that awaits those who see too much. Not the freedom from perception, but the freedom to perceive without suffering. Not the freedom from sensitivity, but the freedom to be sensitive without being destroyed. Not the freedom from loneliness, but the freedom to be alone without being lonely. There is a certain peace that comes from this realization, a peace that does not depend on circumstances, on company, on being seen or validated by others. It is the peace of someone who has finally come home to themselves after a long journey through foreign lands. And from this peace, a new way of moving through the world emerges. You still see everything you always saw. The unspoken words, the hidden wounds, the subtle currents beneath the surface, but now you see them without urgency, without the need to intervene, without the compulsion to fix what is not asking to be fixed. You see them the way a mountain sees the clouds that pass over its peak, present, aware, unmoved. This is not coldness. This is not detachment. This is the highest form of love, the love that allows others to be exactly where they are on their journey, without needing them to be somewhere else. The love that trusts the unfolding, even when the unfolding is painful. The love that sees the perfection hidden within the apparent imperfection of human life. And here is what few people understand about this kind of love. It is actually more helpful than the urgent, absorbing, fixing love you offered before. Because when you are not desperate to change someone, when you are not attached to their healing on your timeline, when you are not entangled in their process as if it were your own, you create space. Space for them to find their own way, space for them to discover their own truth, space for them to heal at their own pace, in their own manner. Your very presence becomes a sanctuary. Not because you do anything special, but because you have stopped doing the many unconscious things that most people do. You have stopped projecting your needs onto others. You have stopped using your perception as a tool for control or connection. You have simply become present. And presence, true presence, is perhaps the rarest gift one human being can offer another. Your simple, undivided attention becomes a form of healing. People feel it even if they cannot name it. They feel that when they are with you, they can finally stop performing. They can finally breathe. And in that presence, miracles become possible. People begin to relax around you in ways they cannot explain. They feel seen without feeling exposed. They feel understood without feeling analyzed. They feel held without feeling trapped. And often, without you saying a word, they begin to open, to share, to reveal parts of themselves they have never shown to anyone. This is the paradox of the one who has learned to see without needing to be seen. They become the safest place in the world for others to be themselves. But let us return to the loneliness, because it does not disappear entirely, and it would be dishonest to pretend otherwise. Even after you have learned to witness yourself, even after you have found peace in your own depths, there will still be moments of profound aloneness. There will still be nights when you look at the world and feel the weight of all you perceive. There will still be times when you long for someone who can truly meet you, someone who sees with the same eyes, feels with the same heart, understands with the same depth. But the quality of this loneliness is different now. It is no longer a wound, it is a window. Through it, you glimpse something that most people never see. You glimpse the essential solitude that underlies all human existence. You glimpse the truth that we are all ultimately alone in our experience. That no matter how deeply we love, how intimately we connect, there remains a core of selfhood that cannot be shared, only witnessed. And in glimpsing this truth, you find a strange kind of comfort. Because you realize that your loneliness is not a personal failing. It is a universal condition. It is the price of consciousness, the cost of being a separate self in an infinite universe. And everyone pays this price, whether they know it or not. The only difference is that you have become conscious of what most people spend their lives trying to avoid. This consciousness is your gift, not because it makes you special, but because it makes you honest. Honest about the human condition, honest about the limits of connection, honest about the vast mystery that underlies every moment of existence. And from this honesty, a different kind of relationship with others becomes possible. You no longer expect them to complete you. You no longer hope they will understand you perfectly. You no longer search for the ideal soulmate who will finally end your solitude. Instead, you appreciate the partial connections, the imperfect understandings, the beautiful attempts at communion that fall short of the infinite. You learn to love the trying. You learn to honor the reaching. You learn to celebrate the moments of genuine meeting, however brief, however incomplete. And in this celebration, something opens. The walls that you built to protect yourself begin to soften. Not because you no longer need protection, but because you realize that true protection does not come from isolation. It comes from a deep rooting in your own being, a rooting so strong that no external circumstance can uproot you. You can afford to be vulnerable now. You can afford to let people in, knowing that even if they cannot meet you fully, their partial presence is a gift. You can afford to share your depths, knowing that even if they cannot be received entirely, the sharing itself is valuable. You can afford to love openly, knowing that even love that is not returned has its own beauty. This is the final teaching of those who see too much. Love anyway. Love despite the loneliness. Love despite the misunderstandings. Love despite the inevitable failures of connection. Love not because others can receive it fully, but because love is your nature. Love not because it will be returned, but because withholding it would be a betrayal of your own soul. The love that heals loneliness is love that has been purified by solitude. What remains after that purification is something purer than you thought possible. A love that loves because that is what love does. A love that gives because giving is its nature. This kind of love cannot be depleted because it does not come from you. It flows through you from some inexhaustible source. Call it grace. Call it the divine. Call it the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. It is real, and it is available to you now. The one who sees too much ends up alone not because love is impossible, but because ordinary love is insufficient. They require a love that does not depend on being understood, a love that does not need to be received to be given, a love that flows from an inner spring that never runs dry. And this love, this unconditional, undemanding, unlimited love, is what transforms loneliness from a prison into a temple. In that temple, alone becomes all one. The separation you have felt your entire life reveals itself to be an illusion. You realize that you have never been alone, not truly. You have been one with everything you perceived, one with every person you tried to understand, one with the vast web of consciousness that connects all beings in ways too subtle for ordinary awareness. Your seeing was never just about you. It was consciousness recognizing itself through your eyes. Your sensitivity was never just about you. It was life feeling itself through your heart. Your loneliness was never just about you. It was existence longing to know itself through your solitude. And when you understand this, truly understand it, not as a concept but as a living reality, the question of loneliness dissolves entirely. You are not a small self trapped in a large and indifferent world. You are the world looking at itself through a particular pair of eyes. You are the universe experiencing itself through a particular configuration of awareness. You are the infinite playing at being finite, the eternal pretending to be temporary, the all pretending to be one. And in this pretending, in this beautiful, heartbreaking, magnificent game of separation and longing and reaching for connection, there is no loneliness. There is only love, looking for itself in all the places it has hidden. This is what those who see too much eventually discover. That their seeing was never a burden. It was a blessing in disguise. That their sensitivity was never a curse. It was a doorway to the sacred. That their loneliness was never a punishment. It was an invitation to discover a love so vast, so all-encompassing, so absolutely unconditional, that no human relationship could ever contain it. And from this discovery, a new way of being emerges. You walk through the world like someone who knows a secret, not a secret you keep from others, but a secret you carry for others. A secret about the nature of love, the purpose of suffering, the meaning hidden within meaninglessness. A secret that shines through your eyes, speaks through your silence, emanates through your presence. This secret is something you discovered in solitude. Your suffering was not wasted. It was composting, transforming into something that can now nourish not just yourself, but everyone you meet. People notice this about you, though they cannot name what they notice. They feel calmer in your presence. They feel more themselves around you. They feel that you see them, really see them, in a way that others do not. And they are right. You do see them. But now you see them without needing anything from them. You see them the way the sun sees the earth, giving light without asking for anything in return. This is the destiny of those who see too much. Not to end up alone in the lonely sense, but to end up alone in the all-one sense. To discover that the loneliness they feared was actually a cocoon, and that within that cocoon, something was transforming. Something was becoming wings. And now those wings are ready to unfold. Not to fly away from the world, but to fly through it with a new kind of freedom. The freedom of someone who has nothing left to prove, nothing left to seek, nothing left to fear. The freedom of someone who has discovered that everything they were looking for was already here, already now, already them. This is the peace that passes understanding. The peace of the one who has stopped struggling against their own nature and has finally said yes to what they are. Yes to the seeing, yes to the feeling, yes to the aloneness that is not loneliness, but wholeness. And in that yes, everything changes. The world that once seemed too harsh, too shallow, too unconscious, reveals itself to be exactly perfect. Not because it is without suffering, but because the suffering is seen to be part of a larger love. Not because everyone understands you, but because understanding is no longer what you need. Not because connection happens easily, but because connection is no longer the goal. Being is the goal. And being is already accomplished. You are already everything you were seeking to become. You are already home in the place you were seeking to find. You are already loved by the love you were seeking to receive. All that remains is to live from this knowing. To walk through your days with quiet confidence in your own nature. To offer your gifts without attachment to how they are received. To love without needing love in return. To see without needing to be seen. This is what it means to be one who sees too much. Not a tragedy, not a curse, not even a gift in the ordinary sense. A way of being awake in a world that is still dreaming. A way of being present in a world that is always somewhere else. A way of being love in a world that has forgotten what love is. You are not better than those who sleep. You are simply awake in a different way. Your wakefulness is not a judgment of their sleeping. It is a gift you hold until they too are ready to open their eyes. And if this resonates with you, if these words have touched something deep within your heart, then perhaps you are ready to stop fighting your nature, ready to embrace your solitude as sacred, ready to transform your loneliness into the most profound belonging you have ever known. The belonging of the one who belongs to everything. The belonging of the one who is at home in the universe. The belonging of the one who has finally discovered that they were never, not for a single moment, alone. You were always held. You were always seen. You were always loved. By the same awareness that looks through your eyes right now. By the same presence that beats your heart this very moment. by the same mystery that drew you to these words and held you here until the end. This is who you are. This is what you have always been. This is what you will always be. Not someone who sees too much, but seeing itself, awake, alive, and finally beautifully, completely at peace.